the fundamental message that we are receiving on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, in our culture, in our way of being, is that if we buy the product, then all will be well with us, with our lives. Or to put it another way, if we're successful consumers and if we have the wherewithal to consume as we're supposed to consume, then we can become content and happy and fulfilled and joyful and basically live the life. There's probably a simpler way of putting that, but that's the basic idea, that all the good stuff will happen if we consume as we're supposed to consume. Now, it's not a verbal message because it's long-winded and it doesn't really make that much impact when you try to express it verbally, as I just did. It's a visual message more than anything else. We just have to think of a picture of a happy, excited, fulfilled, deliriously happy consumer buying a product or with a bag of products in their hand. This image, in lots of different ways, is so familiar to us. It's burned into our brains. They're happy consumer. Oh yeah, consumers are happy. If I consume, I'll be happy. And it's not just adverts that propagate this message. Of course, advertising is a good part of it. It's a reasonably big part of it, but also all of the things we see, whether it's films or TV programs or series of programs that we can watch on Amazon or whatever. The whole idea that is being subliminally expressed is that if we adapt to society and we're able to adapt properly to society, then we've got it made. We're going to be having a great, great time. You couldn't want any more than that. We'll have it all. And not only that, we also, actual individual people also propagate this message. So it's not stated, or it's not explicitly stated, but the expectation that is if we do make money, if we do become successful consumers and we're able to have all the trappings that go with that in excess, so if we're really up there at the top, then we'll have it made. Life will be amazing for us, really amazing. This is not explicitly expressed, but it comes across in the particular almost like expressions. There's a kind of a sense of mystique that because I am rich and powerful, or because I'm famous and rich, or famous and rich and powerful, or whatever combination, I am now privy to the secret of what life is all about. This can't be stated explicitly because it sounds too damn stupid, but it's implied, it's inferred, and it creates an intoxicating it creates an intoxicating aura is entirely convincing. So we ourselves are adverts for this way of life when we make it. It's up to us to play the part, play the game, and go around looking as if we've got something pretty amazing going on for us. As John Berger says, it's our job, not in these exact words, but he says it's our job to look as if we've got something that other people will be envious of. So we become objects of envy. And John Berger says that we don't get any well-being from that. We haven't got anything that's worth envying. We're not happy. There's nothing really going on with us. Far from it. But we can cause other people to be envious of us. And then on an unconscious associative level, we can know that we're doing something right because everyone's envious of us. So if I manage to create envy, then I know that I've got something really good because everyone's envious of what I got. So I must have something really, really good. The plain truth of the matter is that I haven't, and it's all an act. And actually, I've got nothing in my life at all that anyone should be envious. Not that there's any real advantage to being envious anyway, but the whole thing is a loop. So by me pretending I've got something and everyone else believing my pretense, I end up believing my pretense too. So that is the loop. Now, this isn't happiness and it isn't well-being and it isn't any form of mental health at all because it's based on a lie. But it's the surrogate for mental health, is what passes for mental health, the state of being envied, which John Berger refers to as glamour. We have this glamour going on with us. And of course, we all know very well about what this glamour is. We can see it in glossy magazines, on the TV. Anytime we want, we can see this glamour. And we aspire to that glamour. And so we adapt to the social system, because if we adapt successfully, then we can have it for ourselves. Because obviously, because we can see those people who have made it in our society, have got this look of glamour, then it stands to reason that if I can make it, I too will have not so much the glamour, but what the glamour is about, what it's inferring, that I've somehow got it nailed, what life is all about. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Because no way by adapting to society am I ever going to get anything apart from mental ill health. So the state of being adapted to society, particularly our type of society, which is based on this key falsehood, this key lie, by adapting to the lie, which means believing the lie, there's no way that I can obtain happiness, mental health, by believing in a lie. That's not it. If we could become truly fulfilled and happy by believing in a lie, then it wouldn't be a lie. That's the proof of the pudding. You couldn't call it a lie. It's got to be true. So we've got these two levels. We've got the appearance of glamour and we've got the underside of it all, which is profound mental ill health, which has been talked about so much. It involves essentially a sense of meaninglessness and alienation from life itself and alienation from our true nature. It's a very, very profound alienation, and it's a very, very profound meaninglessness, sense of meaninglessness. As Jung said, whenever he wrote this back in the 1950s, it seems like a long time ago now, that our way of living, our way of life engenders a soul sickness, the soul sickness of meaninglessness, the true import of which we haven't even begun to understand. So we hadn't begun to understand it back in the 60s and 50s, far from it. Those were the glory days. And even now, so many years on, however many years on it is, we still don't get the full import of, we don't, the full consequences of what this soul sickness entails. We still don't get it. We're no longer in the glory days, but we're coasting on it. And we're still acting out all of these impulses we're still acting out this key message, the key message which shows a happy consumer. We're still trying to be happy by being that consumer in the pictures, in the images. We're still trying it. It's become far, far more obvious that this is a very, very thin hoax, but we still don't get it. Collectively, we don't get it, even though, obviously, a lot of people do get it, but it doesn't make any difference if people here and there get it. The overall system is up and running, and it's still a long, long way from being redundant. We're showing no signs of seeing through it at all. So if we're wondering about the causes of mental ill health, aside from clinical syndromes such as bipolar affective disorder or schizophrenia, and we could say, okay, that isn't particularly linked with society. But when we look at what is increasing in terms of the, the rate at which people are presenting with mental health problems, we could say, well, depression is increasing. And these are all the things that have been particularly dramatic in the last 10 years or so. Depression's increasing. Trauma, anxiety, anorexia. Basically, the neurotic spectrum, the conditions that are in the neurotic spectrum, they're exploding. And even though there has been lots of research done to show that students, for example, third level students, the degree of the amount of people turning up, students turning up to clinics and saying that they've got problems has increased hugely. Even though we got all that research, we haven't really understood the direct link between all of this and our way of life. And that's not surprising, because it's kind of a big thing to give up the whole way of life. We don't know that there is anything else. We don't know what else to do, and we think it's kind of like we think it's normal. We think this is how things should be because this is the way things are. That's the kind of way we are, really. Whatever way things are, we think, well, this is normal. This is how it has to be. We have to keep on believing in it because we can't see beyond the world that we've been presented with. We can't question the world that we've been presented with. So it becomes frankly impossible just to look at our way of life and say, this is a disastrous way of life. Imagine having a way of life that's based on a central lie, which admittedly it does power the economy, or it used to. Eventually it won't work because everyone will be too neurotic and unable to work and power the machine eventually, because the machine of consumerism isn't treating its component units very well. It's not actually giving them enough well-being for them to carry on functioning. And this is dramatically accelerating since COVID. And as people say, it sounds like a cliche to say it, but social media is playing a huge part in this. Social media is only a reflection of the values of our society anyway, where everything's very superficial, and we're only interested in superficialities, and very quickly we get bored and we want another superficiality. And the only reason we're interested in it's not for any profound reason, but just because it just distracts us for the time being. Then there's the next thing. So our culture is a culture of distraction, and our technologies are technologies of distraction. And we hope to become happy via distraction, which doesn't really work. But then, of course, as you do distract yourself, there is a momentary relief because we've distracted ourselves. And at that point, there's a reward factor. It doesn't last very long, and then you've got to go looking for the next one. But that's our substitute for genuine happiness. Or maybe happiness is the wrong word. It's not as if we were living life more authentically, we'd go around being happy the whole time, like a bunch of lotus eaters, or like a bunch of people on ecstasy. But that there would be a real vigor and vitality to us because there would be some core of meaning in our existence, which is naturally enough fairly important to have some core of meaning to our existence. This doesn't mean believing in some bullshit idea or ism, as Jung puts it. It doesn't mean subscribing to some religion or philosophy that tells you what life's about. That's meaninglessness because it's coming from the outside. That's a form of distraction. That's a way of ignoring how we really feel by believing in whatever the dominant myth is, the dominant story of our times, i.e. being a consumer is what it's all about. And if only we could consume enough, then we would have achieved the ultimate. But when you say that, it sounds really stupid. But the images are very, very powerful. And the images, as I started off by saying, we're suffused with those images everywhere we look. So on a very, very deep level, we cannot help but link what we imagine life ought to be all about, i.e. thrilling and fulfilling, is somehow inextricably linked with making it with some kind of competitive process. It's inextricably linked with winning at whatever the game is. Instead of realizing that all games are distractions, the game distracts us from reality because we're pretending this is important and acting as if it's important, but it isn't. So even when we achieve it, it's totally meaningless. So we have to move on to the next thing. Ivan Illich, using his terminology, would say that we're existing in a state of heteronomy. And a state of heteronomy, as opposed to autonomy, is a state whereby everything comes from the outside, and we're dependent on everything coming from the outside. So we can't do nothing for ourselves, but we're dependent upon it being shipped in from the outside. And just as long as we can keep on shipping in all the stuff that we need from the outside of us, we'll never notice how hollow it is on the inside. We'll never notice how sterile it is to be living a fundamentally non-creative, passive life where we absorb everything, including how we see the world. Everything, absolutely everything, is absorbed from the outside, and there is no inside. So we absorb everything from the outside and we kind of put it together and we make a little kind of, yeah, this is me, kind of like a little kind of way of living life, kind of like a style. Yeah, I'm like this, I enjoy this is me. All of these things we've bought from the supermarket of everyday life. We've purchased it off the shelves and then we cobble them together and then we think, yeah, this says something about me as an individual. Even though everything, it's like trying to prove you're different by doing the same thing everyone else does. And this, of course, is what is a key motif of advertising. Everyone wants to be different, to be set apart from the herd. So advertising cleverly addresses this. Say, be different, buy this product, show yourself to be different, a cut above the rest, a bit more interesting. Show that you've got some style. By doing what everyone else is doing, because everyone else is also watching the adverts and everyone else also needs to try and make out that they're not totally generic in nature, because that is an appalling thing. If there's nothing about you that's any different and that is you and not somebody else, then we all instinctively know that's a dreadful state of affairs. It's a loss of authentic being. So we're driven by this sense of how terrible it is to lose authentic being, or how terrible it is not to have it. And this feeds right into the whole advertising thing, where we become a consumer trying to consume individuality, trying to be different by being like everyone else, basically. It is very, very obvious that being heteronymous is great for the economy, because we need everything. Entertainment is a really big thing. We need to be entertained, and that has to come from the outside, because we can't entertain ourselves. Obviously we can't. If we could entertain ourselves, we wouldn't have to be scrolling the whole time. But it's a bit late to be kind of pointing a finger at this particular process of how we've become heteronymous as a result of scrolling, because It's already happened. It's already over. It's done. We've been defeated. That has already happened. We already are heteronymous. The state of being heteronymous is the inverse of mental health. Mental health is autonomy, where we're not addicted to something on the outside of us and therefore enslaved by something on the outside of us. But if I am in the state of heteronomy and I'm able to ship in lots of good entertainment, lots of whatever it is I need to kid myself I'm living an authentic life, then I don't know that this state of being is actually not healthy at all. So that's the lure. It's like an addict. As an addict, what I'm chasing all the time is that feeling of wellness within me that actually comes from the addiction. So that's where I get my sense of wellness from. But because it isn't coming from within me, because I have to go and find it, because I'm dependent upon it, I'm a slave to the need. So I'm a slave. I have no freedom at all. All I can ever do is chase this poor substitute for actual well-being. But it's the only thing I know as an addict. And it's not just a simple matter of, well, if I stop taking whatever it is I'm addicted to, then before very long I'll feel good in a real way, because that just doesn't happen, as any addict can tell you. When you stop taking the thing you're addicted to, you feel terrible, you feel horrible, it's worse than anything, and that just doesn't go away anytime soon. Becoming free from an addiction is the most difficult thing. It's easy to say, yes, it's a good idea to do this, but it's another thing entirely to do that, because we've forgotten how to be sufficient into ourselves. We've forgotten how to produce the endorphins. That's why I need an external source of endorphins in the form of heroin or whatever other type of thing it is. If I stop with the external source of endorphins, my brain has forgotten how to do that. So when I'm heteronymous, I have forgotten how to be autonomous. And that doesn't spring back into life very quickly at all. It's a long and arduous journey. So when we go on about addiction, as we might do in the case of addiction to alcohol or other substances, we do well to remember that being addicted to substances is a damn sight more honest than being addicted in the way that we are and not even knowing or admitting to the fact that we're addicted.